Vipassana samadhi shi dwa shi de mega samadhi ko yatha maundama ne nai shin pi do phie shin pya pi ba bi. Pi do ti tin de achet kali mya le ti ya aung so pi do acha upama li ne le be nai shin pi do pyo ke ba de. Di ne di Tawtan ko asong ta ani ne ho bo ya yue chet shi ba.
Last evening, the Sayadaw talked about Vipassana, right view, and the noble path, right view, and compared these two types of right view to the driver of a chariot. He also gave various examples to illustrate certain important points. Today, the Sayadaw will bring this series of talks on this particular sutra to a conclusion.
Selebira ma phie shin ngin mani ka pyo ke de samadhi 6 မျိုးရဲ့ချင်းချင်းချမ်းသာခြင်းနဲ့ဆိုင်ရာအကျိုးသွားလေးတွေကိုနည်းနည်းဖြည့်ရှင်းပြီးတော့ပြပါဦးမယ်
For a start, the Sayadaw will explain the differences amongst the 6 types of right views that were described yesterday with regards to their various functions and benefits.
ဒီသမာဓိဋ္ဌိ 6 မျိုးတွေကကာမတက္ကတာသမာဓိဋ္ဌိဆိုတာတတ္တဝါတွေမှာကုသိုလ်ကအကုသိုလ်ကံသာကိုယ်ပိုင်ဥစ္စာရှိတယ်လို့သိမြင်နေဉာဏ်အဲ့ဒီပြုထားတဲ့ကံတွေဟာဘဝတစ်လျှောက်တန်တရားတစ်လျှောက်မှာကိုယ်ပိုင်ဥစ္စာအနေနဲ့ပေါ့လေပါသွားတာပဲအဲ့ဒီလိုပါသွားတဲ့အခြေအနေတွေကိုသိမြင်တဲ့ဉာဏ်ဒါကာမတက္ကတာသမာဓိဋ္ဌိမနေ့ကရှင်းခဲ့ပါတယ်
If you can recall, Sayadaw talked about or explained the first sort of right view yesterday, and this is right view with regards to karma as one's own property. Karma, of course, means all wholesome and unwholesome activities that have been done or are being done. And this right view is the understanding that whatever karma, for good or for bad, that beings do, that karma will follow beings throughout their wanderings in samsara, as though it were their own property.
မကောင်းကံကမကောင်းကျိုးပေးတတ်တယ်လို့အသိရှိထားတော့မကောင်းတာတွေရှောင်ရင်မကောင်းတဲ့ကိုယ်လုံးစိတ်ဓာတ်အဖြစ်မှုတွေရှောင်ရှားရင်မကောင်းတဲ့ဘဝမရောက်ဘူးပေါ့ ကောင်းတဲ့ကုသိုလ်ကံတွေပြုလို့ရှိရင်ကောင်းတဲ့ဘဝတွေရောက်တတ်တယ်ဘဝကလွတ်မြောက်စေနိုင်တဲ့ကုသိုလ်ကံတွေကုသိုလ်တွေအားထုတ်လို့ရှိရင်ဘဝလွတ်မြောက်နိုင်တဲ့အထိအကျိုးပြုနိုင်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဒီအတီလေးရှိထားတော့ကုသိုလ်ကံတွေအခြေခံအစပြီးအစဉ်စဉ်ပြုလုပ်တော့တာပဲပြုလုပ်တော့အကျိုးကျေးဇူးတွေရှိလာတယ်
With this understanding of karma as one's own property, one will be able to refrain from doing that which is unwholesome, and therefore prevent birth in states of woe and states of misery. One will also be able to cultivate wholesome karma, which will lead to rebirth in happy states. One can also cultivate another sort of wholesome karma, which does not perpetuate samsaric existence. On the contrary, this higher sort of wholesome karma is aimed toward release from samsara, liberation from samsara. It can thus be seen that this appreciation and understanding of karma as one's own property is pretty important. It will be the basis for developing the various levels of wholesome karma, which will enable one to reap the appropriate and corresponding wholesome fruits.
ဒီကမ္မစကတသမာဓိဋ္ဌိဟာလောကီဥမာနဲ့ပြောရလို့ရှိရင်တော့ကျန်းရှင်းကြီးပဲအဆုံးကြီးပဲသူကဒီအဆုံးကနေပြီးတော့အရှိအနောက်တောင်မြောက်ပေါ့လေပြီးတော့တောင်ရက်တွေပေါ့လေခွဲလို့ရတယ်မှာจิตထားကျန်းရှင်းကြီးများလို့ပြီးတော့လေကြောင်းခီးနဲ့သွားမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လေစိတ်ကြီးများလို့ပေါ့ဒီမှာလမ်းခွဲတွေပေါ့ဒီကခွဲလို့ရပါတယ်
So this right view of karma as one's own property can be likened to a junction, like a railroad junction, where the train can choose to take the appropriate direction to reach a desired destination. It could also be, perhaps it can also be likened to an international airport where planes land and take off again for various destinations.
ခွဲပုံကတော့ဒါနသီလကုသိုလ်မှုပြုတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကဒါကံလန်းခေါ်ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒီကံလန်းလဲလို့ရှိရင်လူဘဝနတ်ဘဝအဲ့ဒီဘဝတွေရောက်နိုင်ပါတယ်ပါရမီဒါနပါရမီသီလမြောက်ကြိုးစားလို့ရှိရင်ပါရမီတွေပြည့်စုံပြီးတော့နောက်ဆုံးနိဗ္ဗာန်အထိလည်းပဲအထောက်အကူပြုနိုင်ပါတယ်
One direction that can be taken is that which leads to rebirth in good circumstances in the human plane as well as in the celestial realms. This direction can be followed by those who cultivate the practice of charity, dana, and morality, sila. But for those who cultivate this quality of charity and sila, morality, as a form of parami building, then not only will they be led to the human world under favorable circumstances, or to the celestial realms, but throughout their samsaric existence, their meritorious dana and sila will help them to walk on the path that leads to Nibbana.
Bila tamari dekha re chin lo shi yin zan ne ya la de. Edi zan ya la de kha ma edi zan ne shin twai pi lo phit de aman myin ne zana samadhi soda phit de. Edi samadhi ka do zan ya ni de bwa ma siat de tan shin ti ngyi mu ajo de paw ni. Naw zan ne kwai lon twa de kha ma san ya bu Dhamma pi ma kaba ne chi pi de tet tan shi shi ne ya da paw ni. Edi bwa tamati ajo de ya ba da.
The second direction that one can take is that which leads to the Brahma worlds. In order to travel along that way, one has to develop samadhi, concentration, and achieve the various states of absorptions, the various levels of jhana. Now this, of course, the benefits are both immediate as well as futuristic, as well as in the hereafter. The benefits can be enjoyed in this present existence as well as in the future existence. For a person, a yogi, who has attained the jhanas will be able to live in tranquility, being absorbed into his object of meditation, and live with great bliss and tranquility. And if he is able to maintain that jhanic absorptions, the strength of his ability to gain absorption, then upon his death in this existence, he will have the opportunity to be reborn in the Brahma world.
Ito kamera tamadidi ka ne biro nyan lan jaung lai de puggol paw ni. Nyan lan sin lai de bu ati nyan phit aw athuk de athuk lo shi ye. Bawa lu myauk ye ya de. Aku Vipassana samadhi ha da nyan lan sin nyan lan jaung khaw ba de. Chi kan yona pai cha ti mu ka sa asin sin nyan li de phit la bi do naw song yin che piet song bi do Nyina Nibbana ko Ariya Menya Phunya ne Myammak Phyu Thi twa de. Vipassana samadhi yin che piet song do Mega samadhi alu lu phit la da be. Era ka do Tattapati Mega samadhi phit ye abe be ka lot de. Lu bwa na bwa sung yi san yin ni ne khon bwa de to bi do mani ya do ho bwa ma bwa ri sat think mu shi do de. Phla samadhi ka do metta lai lu ngây đoa được cái tao tu cái tập hàng vô ông bỏ đi ví dụ để tao bỏ vào vậy thôi mấy cái lưu xin phù hợp với lại là vậy bây giờ cái đó mỹ đạo gì ngây đoa bị nó nào mà yên này phán ta lại được ấy được bỏ đi mấy cái trong hôm đầu lâu này bên này sao để cái ta bè lại phù cái đó mấy bé bị ta cái ta apu shay này của yên này phán ta lại được bỏ đi tu cái tát xoay tát đi xí vậy cái gì phù đấy mà phải là tamaditi của đó phải là tamaditi khó vậy bây giờ cái nào tamaditi cái đó mấy phía đoa ra phù phía đoa ra Nibbana Sayadaw đoa ra bây giờ bé bị cái ta đi sinh nhật này mà bé giờ đi cái ta đi sinh nhật nào vậy ở đây bây giờ cái nào tamaditi khó vậy tu cái chỗ cái đó thì thu cha ra đó mà xí lại bảo
With a good foundation of right view with respect to karma as one's own property, one can follow another direction on the path to wisdom, on the path of wisdom. The path of wisdom will lead to enlightenment in this very life, a realization of Nibbanic bliss. This entails the gradual development of Vipassana samadhi, of Vipassana right view. As one deepens one's practice by going through the various stages of Vipassana insights, and ultimately culminate in the experience of Nibbana. In fact, the whole range of Vipassana insights is capped by the Noble Path right view and the Noble Fruition right view. When Vipassana insights are completed, automatically the Noble Path consciousness will occur, and immediately after that, the path consciousness. The Noble Path consciousness has as one of its mental factors right view, which of course is what we mean by the path right view. Now this path right view has the very powerful and significant function of uprooting certain kilesas. To be more specific, when the Sotapatti Magga Citta, or the Noble Path consciousness of the stream entrant, occurs, the concomitant mental factor called the path, the concomitant group of mental factors collectively called the Noble Path right view, will uproot the group of kilesas that can bring about rebirth in the lower realms, in the states of woe, of misery. The states of misery refer to the animal world and the various types of hell realms, as well as petas and hungry ghosts. Now, immediately following the path consciousness arises the noble path fruition. The noble fruition consciousness, which also has a group of mental concomitants called the noble fruition right view. Now one may ask, what is the function of this second sort of right view that arises in the fruition consciousness? Have the kilesas not been uprooted yet? They have. The latent or dormant kilesas that will bring about rebirth in the states of misery have been uprooted by the preceding consciousness, or rather by the preceding group of mental concomitants called the path right view. The fruition right view has no other function apart from just cooling the defilements, so to speak. It's like a fire. A fire may have burned itself out, but there's still embers around and it's still warm. And it's just like splashing water over it. Cool the remainder, the little remaining warmth. So too, this is the function of the fruition right view. It does not uproot any defilements, but the defilements which have been uprooted are further cooled. That is all. We talked also yesterday about the last type of right view, which is what is it called? Right, sorry. The reviewing knowledge right view. Reviewing knowledge right view arises immediately after the fruition consciousness. It reviews 5 things, or rather it has the capacity to review 5 things. It may be able to review the occurrence of the path consciousness. Secondly, the fruition consciousness. Thirdly, Nibbana itself as an object of consciousness. And fourthly, the kilesas which have been uprooted. And finally, the kilesas which have yet to be uprooted. Now this reviewing knowledge, right view, does not really serve any important function other than to review what has just happened.
Kuna tamaditi 6 မျိုးကိုအချိန်ခါနဲ့ခွဲလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လိုက်ခွဲလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်လည်းပဲရှင်းရှင်းနားလည်နိုင်ပါတယ် Adi Tamaditi Chamurega Kamasakata Samaditi ha Kavaloga Yia Beroma Mapyakweba Kuduga Aguduga Turuya Echogo Lekhani Pukuri Miyashi Nivare. The Kavaga Pyakweba Chagava Matwavido I Samaditi ha Chitoni Vare Makweba Ratugo Kava Alini Lu Tinzavido Kovare.
Of these 6 types of right views, the first of right view with respect to karma as one's own property is something that is quite perpetual. It is perpetual in the sense that it will never disappear from the face of existence. Even though this particular world system of ours may explode and shatter into 1,000 or 1,000,000 pieces, although it may be totally destroyed, devastated, it will arise in another, it will always be present in another world system. And even though this world system may undergo many different periods of evolution, as long as there are beings, there will be some who will have this right view of karma as one's own property. In view of its perpetual occurrence, it is called the light of the world.
Sanatamaditi Gara San Atute Nidi, Tamadi Atute Nidi, Kabama Mapyakwa the Miaro Atudu Aleshini Mesoye Eddie Jama Alinda Leve Kwewo Yamashiri Babu.
Jhana, right view, will always be present as long as there are people who practice the jhanas and who attain the jhanas.
Suludada Guna Kamadagata Madidi Zana Madidi in Namuha Tadanapa Payadana Siktung Kamu Haleve Joko Yamashiva through Shini Maba.
What is implied is that these 2 right views with regard to karma as one's own property and to jhana will always be present irregardless of whether the Buddha's dispensation is still flourishing or not.
Jane Samaditi Digaro Fiadana Tonlin Kamyuma da Shinaibare.
The remaining types of right view, however, will only be present when the Buddha's dispensation is flourishing. It will only be found within the Buddha's dispensation.
Kuka Zoloshi and Pia Sumari ha Kabama not Shini, but 2 options. Urabada Tungare Nenganima Swing Pia Sumarori. Urabada Tungare Nengam Hopi Melo, Lumio Zuri, my body. Quite beat up Pia Sumarori Shini.
From the time of the Buddha, of Gautama Buddha, until this present age, his teachings are still very much alive. His teachings are especially flourishing in Buddhist countries and are known throughout the world at this moment. Even if a country is not a Buddhist one, there are groups of people, communities who follow the teachings of the Buddha.
အမစကရသမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိဇာနသမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိရှိုံများတဲ့ကတော့သာသနာအလင်းတက်မရနိုင်သေးပါဘူး
With only the first two types of right views, one cannot be rightly said to have received the light of the Buddha's teaching.
ဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့သမာဓိဋ္ဌိ6မျိုးထဲမှာဥပဿနာသမာဓိဋ္ဌိကနေပြီးတော့ပိဿကနာသမာဓိဋ္ဌိအထိဒီ၄မျိုးကိုသာသနာအလင်းထဲမှာထည့်သွင်းပြီးတော့ရေးတွက်ထားလို့ပါပဲ
This is because the remaining four types of right views, starting from Vipassana right view until reviewing knowledge right view, are included in the light of the Buddha's teachings.
ဘယ်ကစတင်ပြီးတော့သာသနာအလင်းဟာလင်းလာတဲ့လို့ဆိုတော့ဥဒိပဋ္ဌာနိယအထုနေတဲ့ယောဂီများပေါ်ရလေးတွေပေါ်ဆဲလိုက်ပြီးတော့ရှုတော့ရှုရအောင်မှာစိတ်ကလေးစိုက်ကြရင်ယုံနဲ့နာပထမဆုံးပိုင်းခြားသိလာတယ်ရှုစရာလေးရတစ်ခုရှုတာလေးရတစ်ခုဆိုတာဒီယုံနာအပြင်ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တ attva မရှိဘူးဆိုတာအမြင်မှန်လေးရလာတာအဲ့ဒီအမြင်မှမရခင်ကဆိုလို့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တ attva ဆိုတဲ့အစွဲပေါ့လေဓမ္မတမ္မောဟအမိုက်ကြီးပေါ့ယုတ်ဓမ္မနန္ဓမ္မပေါ်မှာပြင်းစွာတွေ့ဝေတဲ့အမိုက်ကြီးဖုံးခဲ့ပါတယ်ရှုလိုက်တော့ယုံနာရဲ့လို့ကွဲတည်သွားလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီအမိုက်ကြီးကင်းပြီးတော့ဓမ္မဝဋ္ဌာဏဉာဏ်ကြီးဖြစ်ပေါ်လာတယ်အဲ့ဒီကစတင်ပြီးတော့သာသနာအလင်းဟာအဲ့ဒီအထုတ်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်မှာခုနယုတ်ဓမ္မနန္ဓမ္မကွဲပြီးတော့တည်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်မှာစလင်းတော့တာပဲ
When does the light of the Dhamma start to shine? When yogis are practicing Vipassana meditation and their minds are sufficiently cleared of hindrances and are clear and calm and concentrated, they will be able to distinguish between mind and matter, between the noting mind and the noted object. At such a point, it becomes very clear to them, as a matter of direct personal experience, that apart from these two types of phenomena, there is nothing else. There is no self. There is no permanent entity. There is no I. There is no one there. When this insight dawns upon the yogi, he or she will be freed from the delusion that there is a self within him or her. This delusion occurs because of this veil of ignorance that shields the light of wisdom from shining or penetrating into our consciousness. When this veil of darkness is removed through this very fundamental Vipassana insight, then we say that the light of the Dhamma has shone true. The light of the Dhamma has started to shine upon our consciousness.
ယုံနာလောက်တော့ကွဲတည်တယ်ဒါပေမဲ့လို့ယုံနာတို့ရဲ့ကြောင်းကျိုးဆက်ကိုတော့ဆက်ပြီးတော့မရှုသေးလို့ရှိရင်မတည်သေးဘူးအဲ့ဒီမတည်တဲ့ဟာတော့ပစ္စယတမ္မောအမိုက်ကြီးခေါ်ပါတယ်ဆက်ရှုလို့အကြောင်းနဲ့အကျိုးနဲ့ယုံနာအကြောင်းကြောင့်ယုံနာအကျိုးဖြစ်ပုံလေးတွေပေါ့လေဒါလေးတွေရှုရင်းကသိသွားလို့ရှိရင်ပစ္စယဝါဟုဌာနဉာဏ်အလင်းကြီးဒုတိယသာသနာအလင်းကြီးပေါ်ထွက်လာတာအဲ့ဒီအလင်းကြီးပေါ်ထွက်တာနဲ့ပစ္စယတမ္မောအမိုက်ကြီးလေးကွယ်သွားတာပဲ
But that is only the first layer, and the light that has begun to shine is coming through a translucent second layer. And that second layer is none other than the delusion that these mental and physical phenomena arise in a chaotic way. They are not interrelated or connected at all. If the yogi is able to deepen his practice and gain a further step by comprehending this, by comprehending the mechanism of cause and effect that interrelates, interconnects this mind and matter which are being observed, then the yogi would have peeled off the second layer of delusion with regard to conditionality. The light begins to shine a bit more, a bit brighter.
ကြောင်းကျိုးဆက်ဉာဏ်လောက်တော့ရရှိထားပြီးတော့ဆက်ပြီးတော့အာမထုတ်ပဲနဲ့ဒီတိုင်းနေမယ်ဆိုရင်ကြောင်းကျိုးဆက်တရားတို့ရဲ့မမြဲပုံဆင်းရဲပုံသူသဘောတိုင်းသူဖြစ်ပုံခေါ်တဲ့လက္ခဏာ၃ပါးမသိသေးဘူးအဲ့ဒါလက္ခဏာတမ္မောအမိုက်ကြီးရှိနေတော့မယ်၊ကွယ်တော့မယ်ရှိသေးတယ်သူတို့ဆက်ပြီးတော့အားထုတ်လို့ဖြစ်ပေါ်ပြီးတော့ကွယ်ပြောက်သွားပုံမြဲပုံသိလို့ရှိရင်ဒါလက္ခဏာပฏิဝေဒဉာဏ်ပေါ်လာပြီဆင်းရဲပုံအာဟုစရာမဟုတ်ပုံကြောက်စရာကောင်းပုံသိလို့ရှိရင်ဒုက္ခလက္ခဏာပုံမလင်းလင်းသိတဲ့လက္ခဏာပฏิဝေဒဉာဏ်အလင်းကြီးသဘောတိုင်းသူဖြစ်ပုံပေါ့လေဒါလေးတွေသိလို့ရှိရင်အနတ္တလက္ခဏာကိုသိတာပဲအနတ္တလက္ခဏာပฏิဝေဒဉာဏ်ကြီးပေါ့အဲ့ဒီလက္ခဏာပฏิဝေဒဉာဏ်အလင်းကြီးဖြစ်ပေါ်လာလို့ရှိရင်လက္ခဏာတမ္မောအမိုက်ကြီးကွယ်သွားတာပဲအဲ့ဒီဉာဏ်ကိုတော့သာသနာမှာဆိုရင်ဒုတိယမြောက်အလင်းတက်လို့ခေါ်မှာဒုတိယအလင်းလို့တတိယအလင်းလို့ဆိုမှာပေါ့
But if the yogi becomes complacent and is quite satisfied with his insight into the conditionality of phenomena and stops further practice, then he would still be covered, he would still be engulfed by the darkness of not knowing the characteristics of impermanence, suffering and non-self. And in order to uncover this third veil of ignorance, of delusion, you have to work harder. You have to keep on watching things as they arise. Sharpen your mindfulness, deepen your concentration. Then the wisdom will arise very naturally, giving you an insight into how phenomena arise and pass away from moment to moment. Seeing that seeing this moment to moment arising and passing away brings the dissolution of that veil of darkness that covers insight into impermanence. If one is able to understand the aspect of suffering by looking at these phenomena arising and passing away from moment to moment, in terms of desperation, that there is no refuge at all, there is no refuge at all, can be sought in these impermanent phenomena, nothing to hang on to, nothing to hold on to. It's undependable. There is fear and there is desperation, a sense of deep disappointment. These are all various manifestations of insight into the characteristic of suffering. Thus, when this happens, the veil of ignorance regarding the characteristic of suffering is removed. The light becomes even brighter. And thirdly, if one is able to understand the aspect of non-selfness, selflessness, when one is observing all these fleeting phenomena arising and passing away from moment to moment, then one can appreciate that there is really no one there, that everything is happening according to its own laws. Nobody is controlling anything. At this point, the veil of ignorance of selflessness is removed, and the light of wisdom begins to shine ever more brightly.
ဒီလက္ခဏာပฏิဝေဒဉာဏ်ခေါ်တဲ့ဝိပဿနာဉာဏ်ဟာဒီကာရုပ္ပကဉာဏ်အထိပြည့်စုံနေပေမဲ့လို့အငြိမ့်တနိဗ္ဗာန်ကိုဘုရားမဉ္ဇဉ်ဖူဉာဏ်နဲ့မတွေ့သေးလို့ရှိရင်တော့မက္ကပฏิဝေဒပေါ့မက္ကတမ္မောဟအမိုက်ကြီးပေါ့ဒါကြီးကွဲနေနိဗ္ဗာန်တမ္မောဟအမိုက်ကြီးလေနိဗ္ဗာန်တမ္မောဟအမိုက်ကြီးကွဲနေသေးတာပဲသူကကာကွယ်ထားတာပဲသင်္ကာရိပ္ပကဉာဏ်ကနေပြီးတော့တက်ပြီးတော့အနုလောမဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ပြမစအငြိမ့်တကိုမဉ္ဇဉ်ဖူဉာဏ်နဲ့မျက်မှောက်ပြုသိသွားပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်နိဗ္ဗာန်ပฏิဝေဒဉာဏ်အလင်းကြီးတစ်ခါတည်းစိုက်လာတော့တာပဲဓမ္မအဲ့ဒါမှာတော့သာသနာမှာဒါတကယ်အရေးပါတဲ့ငြိမ့်တဲ့နိဗ္ဗာန်တွေ့သွားပြီဆိုတော့သိကြသွားပြီပေါ့အဲ့ဒါသရုဋ္ဌသာသနာအလင်းကြီးပါပဲ
No matter how well developed these three types of realization into the three characteristics of phenomena may be, even until the stage of knowledge or insight into equanimity, there is still the veil of ignorance that covers one's consciousness, another veil. And this layer is the veil that covers the realization of Nibbana. This veil can only be removed when, as a culmination to the whole set of Vipassana insights, the path consciousness occurs, at which point one can say that the light of the Buddha's teaching truly begins to shine.
Vipassana Dhammaကတော့မေဃသမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိဖလသမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိနဲ့ဆက်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ဖြစ်တာမလို့သူလည်းပဲသာသနာအလင်းထဲမှာထည့်ရမှာပါပဲ
Because reviewing knowledge, right view, is closely related to path, right view, and fruition, right view, it is automatically included as a component of the light of the Buddha's teaching.
ခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့ဟာတွေကောက်ချက်ချလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ကမ္မတက္ကတသမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိလောက်သာရှိပြီးတော့ဒါနသီလလေးလောက်နဲ့ပြီးရတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေဟာကမ္ဘာအလင်းလောက်ပဲရတယ်သာသနာလေးမရဘူးပြီးတော့သမာဓိတရားလေးလောက်အားထုတ်ပြီးတော့ဇာန်တို့အဘိညာဉ်တို့အဲ့ဒီလောက်ရတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကလည်းပဲဝိပဿနာသမာဓိတိမရှိဘူးအယုတ်ဆုံးအားဖြင့်ယုံနာတော့မှပိုင်းခြားမသိသေးဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူ့မှာလည်းပဲသာသနာအလင်းမရသေးပါဘူး
You can therefore notice that a person who is quite satisfied with the first two types of right views, or rather, who is quite satisfied with the right view related to karma as one's own property, will not have access to the light of the Dhamma, the light of the Buddha's dispensation. He can only be brightened by the light of the world, but he is far away from the light of the sasana. Even a person who develops the jhanas and attains the jhanas, no matter how skillful he may be in getting into absorptions, will still not come into the light of the sasana, of the Buddha's dispensation. If he is only content with developing his jhanic absorptions and does not even, or is not even able to distinguish between mind and matter in an intuitive way, he is indeed far from the light of the Dhamma, of the Buddha's dispensation.
တချို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကုသိုလ်ကအကုသိုလ်ကနားမလဲဘူးကုသိုလ်ပြုလည်းပဲအကျိုးမရအကုသိုလ်ပြုလည်းပဲအပြစ်မဖြစ်လို့ဒီလိုယူဆထားတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေဆိုရင်အခြေခံကစပြီးတော့ကမ္ဘာအလင်းကြီးကွဲသွားပြီသာသနာအလင်းလင်းဖို့ဝေးလို့ကမ္ဘာအလင်းတော့ကွဲသွားပြီပြီးတော့ဇာနတမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိလည်းပဲအဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဖြစ်ဖို့ရလည်းပဲအခွင့်မရှိတော့ဘူးဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့ဇာနတမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိကကာမတက္ကတသမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိကခွဲရမှာကိုအခြေခံကာမတက္ကတသမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိကမ္ဘာအလင်းတော့မှမရှိဘူးဆိုတော့ဘယ်ကလာပြီးတော့ဇာနတမ္မာဒိဋ္ဌိလည်းဖြစ်နိုင်မှာတော့မလဲသူ့မှာတော့လုံးဝကိုအလင်းတက်တွေကွယ်သွားပြီ
There are some people who do not even understand or try to appreciate the difference between wholesome and unwholesome karma. Such people are indeed far from any light at all, far from the light of the world, not to mention that of the Buddhist dispensation. For such people, it is not possible for them to develop the jhanas, because jhana, right view, comes from a very solid foundation in right view with regard to karma as one's own property. So you can see that for such people, they live in a world, they live in total darkness, away from the light of the world, as well as that of the Buddhist dispensation.
ဒီတော့ကမ္မတက္ကတာသမာဓိတိကအစကွယ်သွားပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီကွယ်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်မှာဘာနဲ့တူလဲဆိုတော့အမိဝမ်းတွဲတဲ့ကိုကမျက်စိမပါဘဲနဲ့မွေးလာတဲ့လူလိုပဲမျက်စိမပါတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကမြင်စရာမျက်စိရရှိမှမရှိပဲကိုသူကွယ်လာတော့ဘာမှမြင်တော့ဘူးဘာမှမမြင်တော့လမ်းမှန်လားလမ်းမှားလားလမ်းနေပါဒီသွားတဲ့အခါမှာဒီနာကျင်းနေကြိုက်နေရှိသလားဆူတွေရှိသလားဘေးရန်ရှိသလားဆိုတာမသိဘူးတွဲမဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်မပါဘဲနဲ့ရမ်းသွားလို့ရှိရင်တော့လမ်းမှလိုက်ဖို့ကတော့မရတယ်လမ်းမှလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်သူ့အတွက်တော့နစ်နာဖို့ကတော့တည်ကြနေတာပဲအဲ့တော့သူ့အဖို့ရတော့အများကြီးပဲနစ်နာသွားပါတယ်မနာကြောက်စရာကောင်းပါတယ်
The person who is devoid of this first and fundamental sort of right view with regard to karma can be likened to a baby who is blind the very moment it existed in its mother's womb. When such a baby is born, he lives in a world of total darkness. He is completely blind. And it is, and even if it's able to grow up, it will never be able to see. It will not be able to choose to make his way through, make his way around. He will not be able to follow a right path or a wrong path. And without a guide to lead him, to follow him around, he will fall into the wrong path more often than not. So for such a person who is blind and guideless, one can imagine how much suffering, how much accidents he will be prone to.
Edi the body go chajanana tina lebiro kulu sasa ya simpinido khali maboli. Kamasakata samadhi kaba linda mi pubiro Tadana Linda Chi Patama Linga Niviro no so Saruta Linti body. Linda Yabuya, Luabare. Eddie Linda Biwas or Yata, no, Edipoku Ha Boa de Shaolo, Dandia de Shaolo, Peromania, Linda Ji Mapioguero, Tadana Linda Ji Mapioguero, the PV the Lili Mido, Tobu that she and also. Redman Gilidari, Pandamia, Columba, Shimbi de Kama, Linder, Limit, Shindra, Shimido, was that the name of a Shiva.
It is therefore very important for all of you to establish yourselves in this very basic and fundamental right view with regard to karma as one's own property. and develop Vipassana right view through its various stages, until eventually you may realize Nibbana through the auspices of the noble path right view and the noble fruition right view. In this way, not only will you be radiant with the light of the world, but you will also be bathed in the light of the Buddha's sasana, the Buddha's dispensation. For such a person, then he will never be separated from the light of wisdom wherever he may be, in this existence or in his future wanderings. The light of wisdom will never dim for such a person who has attained to Nibbana, attained to the first stage of Nibbana, of enlightenment. On the contrary, the light of wisdom that has been ignited within him or her will shine ever more brightly throughout the remainder of his or her wanderings in samsara. And eventually, that will be this big fireworks when the arahata, or the final stage of enlightenment, is attained. And there is a final drop of curtain as you end samsaric existence.
Edi ni abhi Myat Swa Bhuya ha Ditana ko asong thap pi doနောက်ဆုံးမှာသစ္စာ၄ပါးကြတော်မူပါတယ်သစ္စာ၄ပါးကြတော်မူတဲ့အတိုင်းနတ်သားဟာကိုယ်ရဲ့စိုက်ပြီးတော့ရှုလို့မြတ်စွာဘုရားရဲ့မျက်မှောက်မှာပဲသောတပတ္တိမဉ္ဇဉ်ဖူဉ္ဇဉ်ကြီးရရှိသွားပါတယ်တဲ့ဆိုပါတယ်သောတပတ္တိမဉ္ဇဉ်ရရှိတဲ့အတွက်ရနိုင်တဲ့အကျိုးတွေတော့နောက်နေ့မှာပဲဆက်ပြီးတော့ပြောမှာပါပဲ
Well, to get back to the story of the bhikkhu who became a deva. So the Buddha gave him this discourse, not in so much detail, of course, and concluded it by talking about the Four Noble Truths. And the deva, who was listening very attentively, immediately perceived the point that the Buddha was trying to bring across, and it is said that he became enlightened there and then as a sotapan, as a stream entrant. The benefits of a stream entrant are manifold, and the Sayadaw will talk about them in a later talk.